Hi guys, rescue in Minus Land. I don't like it here at all, Charlie whispered. It gives me the willies. Me too, Mr. Wonka whispered back, but we've got a job to do, Charlie, and we must go through with it. The mist was condensing now on the glass walls of the elevator, making it difficult to see out except through the doors. Do any other creatures live here, Mr. Wonka? Plenty of Newlies. Are they dangerous? If they bite you, they are. You're a goner, my boy. If you're bitten by a goonie. Or a newly. It's spelled weird. The elevator drifted on, rocking gently from side to side. The gray-black oily fog swirled around them. What does a newly look like, Mr. Wonka? They don't look like anything, Charlie. They can't. You mean you've never seen one? You can't see newlies, my boy. You can't even feel them until they puncture your skin. Then it's too late. They've got you. You mean there might be swarms of them all around us in this very moment? Charlie asked. There might, said Mr. Wonka. Charlie felt his skin beginning to creep. Did you die at once? He asked. First you become subtracted. A little later you are divided, but very slowly. It takes a long time. It's long division and it's very painful. After that, you become one of them. Couldn't we shut the door? Charlie asked. I'm afraid not, my boy. We'd never see her through the glass. There's too much mist and moisture. She's not going to be easy to pick out anyway. Charlie stood at the open door of the elevator and stared into the swirling vapors. This, he thought, is what hell must look like. Hell without heat. There was something unholy about it all. Something unbelievable diabolical. It was all so deathly quiet, so desolate and empty. At the same time, the constant moving, the twisting and swirling of the misty vapors gave one the feeling that some very powerful force, evil and malignant, was at work all around. Charlie felt a jab on his arm. He jumped. He almost jumped out of the elevator. Sorry, said Mr. Wonka. It's only me. Oh, Charlie gasped. For a second I thought, I know what you thought, Charlie. And by the way, I'm awfully glad you're with me. How would you like to come here alone, as I did, as I had to, many times? I wouldn't, said Charlie. There she is, said Mr. Wonka, pointing. No, she isn't. Oh, dear. I could have sworn I saw her for a moment right over there on the edge of that dark patch. Keep watching, Charlie. There, said Charlie. Over there, look. Where, said Mr. Wonka. Point to her, Charlie. She's gone again. She sort of faded away, Charlie said. They looked at the open door of the elevator, peering into the swirly gray vapors. There, quick, right there, Charlie said. Can't you see her? Yes, Charlie, I see her. I'm moving up close now. Mr. Wonka reached behind him and began touching a number of buttons. Grandma, Charlie cried out. We've come to get you, Grandma. They could see her faintly through the mist, but oh so faintly. And they could see the mist through her as well. She was transparent. She was hardly there at all. She was no more than a shadow. They could see her face and just the faintest outline of her body, swathed in a sort of gown. But she wasn't upright. She was floating lengthwise in the swirling vapor. Why is she laying down? Charlie whispered. Because she's a minus, Charlie. Surely you know what a minus looks like. Like that. Mr. Wonka drew a horizontal line in the air with his finger. The elevator glided closed. The ghostly shadow of Grandma Georgina's face was no more than a yard away now. Charlie reached out through the door to touch her, but there was nothing there to touch. His hand went right through her skin. Grandma, he gasped. She began to drift away. Stand back, ordered Mr. Wonka, and suddenly from some secret place inside his coattails, he whisked out a spray gun. It was one of those old-fashioned things people used to use for spraying fly spray around the room before aerosols came along. He aimed the spray gun straight into the shadow of Grandma Georgina, and he pumped the handle hard. Once, twice, 3 times. Each time, a fine black spray squirted out from the nozzle of the gun. Instantly, Grandma Georgina disappeared. A bullseye! Cried Mr. Wonka, jumping up and down with excitement. I got her with both barrels. I plussed her good and prosper. That's Vida Wonk for you. Where's she gone? Charlie asked. Back where she came from, of course, to the factory. She's a minus no longer, my boy. She's a 100% red-blooded plus. Come along now, let's get out of here quickly before the Newleys find us. Mr. Wonka jabbed a button, the doors closed, and the great elevator shot upwards for home. Sit down and strap yourself in again, Charlie, said Mr. Wonka. We're going flat out this time. The elevator roared and rocketed up towards the surface of the earth. Mr. Wonka and Charlie sat side by side on their little jump seats, strapped in tight. Mr. Wonka started tucking the spray gun back into that enormous pocket somewhere in his coattails. It's such a pity one has to use a clumsy old thing like this, he said, but there's simply no other way of doing it. Ideally, of course, one would measure out exactly the right number of drops into a teaspoon and feed it carefully into the mouth. But it's impossible to feed anything into a minus. It's like trying to feed one's own shadow. That's why I've got to use a spray gun. Spray 'em all over, my boy. That's the only way. It worked fine, though, didn't it? Charlie said. Oh, it worked all right, Charlie. It worked beautifully. All I'm saying is that there's bound to be a slight overdose. I don't quite know what you mean, Mr. Wonka. My dear boy, if it only takes 4 drops of Vita Wonk to turn a young Oompa Loompa into an old man, Mr. Wonka lifted his hands and let them fall limply to his hands. You mean Grandma may have got too much? Asked Charlie, turning slightly pale. I'm afraid that's putting it rather mildly, said Mr. Wonka. But why did you give her such a lot of it then? Said Charlie, getting more and more worried. Why did you spray her 3 times? She must have got pints and pints of it. Gallons, said Mr. Wonka, slapping his thighs. Gallons and gallons. But don't let a little thing like that bother you, my dear Charlie. The important part is we've got her back. She's a minus no longer. She's a lovely plus. There he is spraying her. She's as plussy can be. She's no more plussy than you or than me. The question is how. Just how old is she now? Is she more than 103? That is the end of chapter 17. Chapter 18 is a little longer, so we'll read that one tomorrow. You guys draw me a picture. Lots of stuff happened in this chapter, and it was very small and very compact. But Charlie and Willy Wonka got Grandma. What do you think is going to happen to Grandma Georgina? The next chapter is entitled The Oldest Person on Earth. So that should give you a clue as to what happened to Grandma Georgina. Show it in a picture and write out a little statement that goes with it. And please, please, please remember, everybody stay safe and wash your hands, please. See you in a bit.